Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast for Wednesday, October the 23rd. I'm Zach Ewing with Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. Back after, I guess, almost a week off, guys. We're in a Thursday night game. Back on Wednesday, kind of pick up the pieces. The Saints have made a lot of changes, a lot of moves, and another big game this week. Is it fair to say it's a big game?
I think it's fair to say pretty much everything from here on out is a big game for them. Unless they obviously
for a while, yeah.
Unless they drop a couple here and it just becomes evident that they're going absolutely nowhere. They've put themselves in a position where they have to go on a streak here to make this season relevant. To make them believe that they are as good as they once thought they were. Matt.
Yeah, some could argue that maybe that's already happened and they aren't a very good football team, but,
they're clearly still trying to win. They're still adding pieces. We'll talk about Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Jeff, I know you had some thoughts.
Actually, it is Marquez.
I'm sorry, Marquez.
I've drilled it into my head so I don't call him Marquez, but I guarantee I'm going to call him Marquez at first.
As a New Mexican kid, Marquez just rolls right off the tongue. Marquez is like sacrilege, but we'll honor his sacrilege.
His name is sacrilege.
Come on. Jeff, you had mentioned the trade deadline too. Like, you think the Saints are still buyers, are still going for this thing?
Yeah, I think that's how they're wired, right? It's how Mickey Loomis is wired. I think he's going to want to give Dennis Allen, the coach he hired, every opportunity to pull this thing or turn this thing around. And clearly, with all these injuries, and the injury to Shaheed was really, I think, devastating in some ways. This is obviously a move to rectify that and try and plug that hole. But they have been on a little bit of a soft reset this past offseason, so I don't know how aggressive they'll be. I think the next few weeks, certainly this weekend, will kind of dictate somewhat how the season goes. If they get to 2-6. I don't know. Would he have to go the rest of the way to think about the playoffs?
Pretty much undefeated, right?
Yeah,
maybe 8-1.
To ensure
8-1.
Yeah, at least 8-1. That's hard to see this team doing it, but we'll see. I do think the fact that they're going to get some guys back from injury, including potentially Taysom Hill and then Derek Carr, those are two big pieces for this team.
All stuff we will talk about today. Also, the Alvin Kamara contract extension. That's what we're going to talk about first. Want to let you know that Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to Bank Anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with some Alvin Kamara contract discussion right after this.
Nice bike.
Thanks. Can I get it back before Saturday?
That might be tough.
Whoa. Is it just you?
For now, let's take a look.
Hi, strawberry mango.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go. Thank you. I'll take another one.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
Okay, so news came out yesterday evening that the Saints' long-awaited contract extension for Alvin Kamara has come through. We've been talking about it since the summer, since minicamp, Luke, when you talked to him and found out he's holding out because of a contract situation. And so the Saints get it done. It's a 2-year, $24.5 million extension with $22 million guaranteed. Am I right in that? Does that sound right?
Guarantees right?
That sounds right. I don't know off the top of my head.
So the language I saw said effectively $22 million guaranteed.
Yeah, we'll have to see how the contract breaks down.
Yeah, the effectively, I think, is a key word there.
But I think the thing that you can say is that they are going to gain some 2025 cap relief from this.
Yes.
They're going to gain the cap relief without having to release Alvin. So it's essentially, it works out to the exact same amount they would have saved had they released him. But they get to keep him on their team. So I think that is a positive. Like, he will be here at least through next year, and I'm assuming a lot of those guarantees are backloaded as well. So we'd probably imagine him being here for the next 2.5 seasons.
Jeff, is this the timing of this surprise you at all, that they would do this in the middle of a losing streak? I mean, does that make any difference?
I think there's some of that to it. I think they've been working on it for a while, and they probably want to, do the right thing by Alvin, at the same time not handicapping themselves going forward. I think Alvin's been pretty outspoken about how things are going, so they probably want to take care of one of their team leaders as well. And look, this should, by all counts, I haven't seen the details. The devil's always in the details, but it should keep Alvin Kamara here for the rest of his career, I would think. He'd be one of the rare players to play his whole career in New Orleans. I think Cam Jordan would be like that. Maybe Ryan Ramczyk, we don't know. And he probably will be one of 2 players from that great 2017 draft class that will play his entire career in New Orleans.
Yeah, and you're also talking about a running back starting and finishing his career in one place, which is becoming more and more and more and more rare.
I don't think you've seen that since 80s and 90s. I mean,
Deuce
McAllister did.
Maybe here and there, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's happened, but it's become a lot.
It's more often like Mark Ingram, bounce around and maybe come back, but
right.
That's the norm.
Yeah. I guess that kind of leads me to this question. And this is going to be our transaction segment, which is proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and help support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. And that is this. Rod Walker wrote earlier this season, I think it was after the Atlanta game, where Alvin had a good game playing with broken ribs, Matt. And Rod said, give him his flowers and give him his contract. He deserves it. And to me, there's an element of that in this, is that Alvin Kamara deserves this contract. He's a lifer. He's put in the time. But then the separate conversation is, okay, are you just doing right by the guy, like you said, Jeff, or is this actually a positive team decision?
I mean, I think it sends a message to the team that they're not quitting on the season, that they're all in, committed to this still. They've talked a lot about buy-in in recent weeks. Saints are literally buying into one of their players, giving him more money. Whether it was a wise decision, I mean, they just committed $12.5 million per year to a running back who's currently averaging 3.1 yards per carry during this losing streak. Like, I know that the running game, the issues go far beyond Kamara, but I mean, he was so good in those first 2 weeks. I think it's okay to give him that money, but you have to see that the circumstances have to be right around him. And I don't know if the circumstances of this roster, I don't know if their roster is the right situation for him to thrive at the moment. And I don't know how much giving him more money goes towards fixing that roster.
What say you guys?
I get what Matt's saying, and to an extent I agree with it. But at the same time, I think that he has shown this season even that he can be an effective player in the right situation. Not even an effective player, a really, really good player.
He was their best player through the first 4 weeks. I mean,
yeah, and as dire as it is right now, I think there is like a little bit of a fluky element to their injury situation this year. Every team obviously goes through every year with injuries. Stuff's going to happen, but Saints were on their fifth string center. Kyle Hergel was playing huge snaps for him. He's an undrafted free agent. They've had a really, really bad offensive interior situation that I think has really kind of blown up everything. And then you add in the mix Derek Carr being out. Teams can just kind of sell out to stop the run because they know they're not going to be able to hurt him with the pass. I still think he's a really good player, and I think the argument about running backs being devalued as they turn 30, I think has kind of started to peter out a little bit as teams have gotten smarter about managing players' loads, as players have gotten smarter about training. You look at right now, Derrick Henry's on pace for 2,200 yards. He's 30 years old. Aaron Jones is on pace for almost 1,200 yards. He's 30 years old. Raheem Mostert set a career high in rushing last year at 30 years old, or 31. I think that it is possible for a player to remain a high level player into their 30s, especially with somebody like Alvin who takes really, really good care of his body. Now the situation has to be right, like you're talking about, and I think there's a case to be made that it wasn't a wise investment because they've got so many other holes to plug that they could have used that $12 million in 2026, but their cap situation is going to be as good next year as it would have been if they released him. You're just talking about 1 year there, and I think he's going to make them a better team in 2025 versus if he was playing somewhere else and you just cut bait and cut loose.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with them doing it. I guess it's the amount, or like what's kind of the purpose of that move? Like, where is it getting you as a team? I mean, he's a very good player. He can probably still help them. It's just like you made him the 4th highest paid running back in the league after he was already the 2nd highest paid running back in the league in terms of like average annual value. It just strikes me at like, I don't know if we can have it both ways. I don't know if we can praise saying, oh, what a good deal for Kamara, and then also say, oh, the Saints roster is old. It's not going anywhere. They need to like blow it up. Like we've had this conversation on the show, and Saints fans are having it too, and national media. Like, what's the roster construction? Is there a problem here? Are they going all in for what purpose? Like, it just kind of strikes me more on that rather than that soft reset we were talking about with Jeff and trying to get back things to normal. I don't know how much it gets it back to normal.
And I feel like, look, for better or worse, at least since Sean Payton's left town, the organization has valued this continuity and stability. And sometimes I think it can be for worse, right? I mean, I think in the Cam Jordan situation, as much as everybody loves Cam Jordan, that's not looking like a good deal that they did a year ago, extending him. Now, they might get him out from under if Cam elects to retire, but they're being loyal to a player. And I think what you said earlier, sending a message to the rest of the roster, is part of what this deal's about.
Yeah.
They're saying, look, if you come in and you produce like Alvin and you play through injuries and all the things he's done to be a team player, we're going to take care of you. I think there's a lot of that going on here. I don't think if you injected truth serum into Mickey Loomis, I don't think he probably believes he's worth $12.5 million at this point. But I think he's saying there's other things that we're paying Alvin Kamara for, loyalty and all that. Now, you can make an argument in the world of roster management and building. You don't pay for what someone's done. You pay for what they're going to do.
Right.
And maybe that's wrong. But I understand in this instance with a player like him that's done everything he's done, that's probably going to retire with all the rushing records.
And he's 230 yards away from currently breaking the rushing record.
He's a special player. Like, I'm not trying to
I'm
diminish.
just
I just don't know. Like, I'm just torn on it. I think maybe more than you guys.
But I think the only thing that it's really costing him is in 26, right?
Right.
I mean, it has almost no bearing on their cap next year because the other option was they were going to release him, and they have like essentially the same cap hit next year. So that's where it doesn't. Like, they just ripped up that final BS year of his contract and it basically added another year onto it.
I guess maybe I would reevaluate. I need to see the final numbers just because, like, what is the dead cap hit going to be in 2026 if they want to get rid of him? Like, how does that? I mean, is it better to move on now? Like, he'd still have $10 million left on his, like, in dead money if you had released him in 2025, like they were originally going to do. So it's like, I just want to see the final numbers of it and how it kind of pans out, what it looks like after him, because it just feels like they're again kicking the can down the road of trying to push off rebuilding.
What's the long-term vision of it, I think, is a little bit of like what I would question. Like, what are we talking about here? But they're taking care of a player that they feel like is a guy that is a standout in a lot of ways. But I also question if it's the smart thing long-term, which I know we're talking, 2.5 years.
I think it's also worth pointing out that from a public relations standpoint, this is probably something that
They
Oh,
needed
yeah, I
something.
mean,
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, that's
But that's an
definitely
expensive public relations.
That's the
win.
wrong thing to do if you're making those decisions.
But like again, it's
they're in a tough situation right now. They need goodwill, and they don't have a lot of it.
yeah, like if they would have traded Alvin Kamara at the trade deadline,
Yeah,
you know, I think there would
that's
have been people
also-
out there with pitchforks at 5800 Airline Drive.
That's where they're at, and that's not a good place to be when you're making roster decisions based on public sentiment.
Yeah, I think whether it was a good idea is a legitimate question. We just proved that with a pretty good discussion there. So, one of the things you mentioned, Luke, that's kept him from being the player he was the first 2 weeks is obviously injuries. And so, as we start to look forward to this Week 8 game in LA against the Chargers, the Saints look like they're going to get several reinforcements back. Cesar Ruiz is supposed to be back. Taysom Hill is supposed to be back. Again, we're recording Wednesday morning. We don't have a Wednesday injury report, but it looks like some help is on the way. Maybe a 4/5 of the opening day offensive line back, just accepting Eric McCoy, who's obviously an important piece, but you get Taysom back. Maybe Chris Olave comes back, and maybe Derek Carr comes back.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about potentially 5 starters coming back on the offense. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if 2 of those guys are on the offensive interior. I mean, Lucas Patrick, we're anticipating is going to be back because he was active for the last game and really was just available, what we're assuming, in an emergency capacity. Like, they completely ran out of offensive linemen. And, you know, they have a 10-day break in between games. You fully anticipate him being back, fully anticipate Cesar Ruiz being back. I mean, Derek Carr would be huge. Chris Olave would be huge. Obviously, you're going to miss Rashid Shaheed, and you're still missing Eric McCoy. But, like, 5 starters is a huge bump for that offense that has really struggled lately. So, I mean, really big news for everybody. For Alvin, for everybody on that offense.
Yeah. I think probably the place it helps the most, and we were talking about Alvin, Matt, but this run game needed those reinforcements. We've seen how Taysom Hill changes that run game, too, with different things you can do with misdirection and motion and all that jazz. And that's really where the Saints need to get better on offense, first and foremost.
They do, and I just think teams they know that interior has been as weak as it has been, and they're just attacking. Like, that's, I think, where most of the pressure is coming from. Ben Baldwin, who runs like a analytics Twitter account, he has like these graphs of, it's on one side it's like PFF grades, and the other it's ESPN pass rush win rate. And for the passing column, the Saints pass grade was like right at the bottom of those 2 intersections. Like, it's the pass protection in particular hasn't been very good. The run blocking has been graded better, I think, because of those first 2 weeks in particular. But that's the area that I think has really fallen off during this 5-game losing streak is that interior. It's really...
Yeah, and as far as the passing game goes, the Saints added one more reinforcement. We mentioned him at the top, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Veteran receiver they bring in, basically to replace Rashid Shaheed, who's out for the season. He started his career in Green Bay under Aaron Rodgers. He won 2 Super Bowls in Kansas City, and then most recently was with Buffalo. He did not play this year at all, at least not in the regular season. So how much of a difference can he make, or is he just sort of a guy?
I mean, I don't think he's just a guy per se, especially when you look at what else the Saints are working with in their receiver room. Mason Tipton has looked over his head. Bub Means has flashed some nice things the last couple games, but he's still a rookie 5th-round draft pick. Cedric Wilson has not really brought much at all to the pass catching game, even though he caught a touchdown late in that game last week. But still, look, Dennis Allen brought it up. He's 6'4". He was a guy who's averaged almost 17 yards per catch in his career. Like, there are some things you like as a potential replacement for Rashid Shaheed. It's going to be like a value brand replacement. But look, he's played with Aaron Rodgers when he was an MVP. He's played with Patrick Mahomes, and he's played with this year with Josh Allen. His career highs in reception is 42, in receiving yards is 690, and receiving touchdowns is 6. He's not a difference maker. He's he's probably better than some of the guys they have on their roster right now. But this is, to me, he's kind of smacks of like late career Ted Ginn.
Yeah, like I may be wrong, but I thought he played this year in Buffalo.
He did. Just
didn't do much.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he caught like
two
one.
catches, 28 yards.
I must have missed the one game.
Yeah,
but,
he's played. He played. He just didn't produce. I don't think it's a great sign. Buffalo was so desperate for receivers. He's the one they cut when they traded for Amari Cooper. I don't think that says a lot about where the Saints are at a receiver. That this guy, but I would say, to Luke's point, I think they got him for a specific skill set that he brings that they don't really have. He's a bigger guy and he's a vertical threat. You look at his career, that's what he did. He was vertical threat. Like 1 year he averaged like 20 yards a catch.
Almost 21, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what he's going to play in this offense, and makes sense. I mean, that's not what that's what you lost with Shaheed, so it makes sense to me. But I wouldn't expect him to come in and light things up.
Yeah.
It's not what he was doing.
And who else is really out there? Like, putting Mike Thomas aside, first they worked out Terrace Marshall, the former LSU kid who was a bust in Carolina, and then they also worked out Dax Milne. If you want to hit the bell, Luke, more of a slot receiver from Washington. So like this fits kind of what they were looking for, and they've pursued him before. They were interested in him in 2022 apparently. Jordan Schultz reported that they were interested in him in this offseason. And so I think it makes sense given who else was out there.
Trade deadline is in 13 days. Do we expect anything else? Does it depend on how this weekend goes?
I mean, not really.
Cooper Kupp?
No, I don't think Cooper Kupp is
Throw
walking
that out
through
there,
that
baby.
door.
Stir the pot.
I don't think he is. They've had. Most of the receivers who were going to be traded have been traded. Right? There's 3 of them now. DeAndre Hopkins was traded last night to the Chiefs. Yep. Amari Cooper, Devontae Adams. Now, obviously, they were in on the Devontae Adams thing. It didn't work out. I would be personally surprised. And I guess you look at some of the teams out there who are kind of in the tank. I don't know who else, maybe besides the Cooper Kupp thing, I don't know who else has a receiver worth trading for.
Right. I don't know. You shouldn't give up draft picks for him, but the one that I could see maybe is if the Jets release Mike Williams. The Athletic reported that the Saints were interested in him. Maybe they try and take a flyer, try and convince him to come here because he'd be, it would be
a small upgrade of what they had anyway. Yeah.
A guy who's missed about 8 games or 9 games a year in his career,
he'll fit right in.
Yeah.
As Cooper Kupp, by the way, has had 3 straight years missing games with injury too. So you just wonder if that's why the Rams are shopping him.
At this time of year, you're looking at either teams are buyers or sellers. I think the Saints are kind of squarely in the middle right now. They've never been much of a sell-off team. They're always all in. So I can't see them trading away like a Chase Young at this stage. That would signal to the locker room you're kind of giving up, right?
It's the only comparable season 2022 because they really haven't been in sell-off position, I guess, in 2005. But that was a different era of the NFL.
It was also just a one-off year that, with the Katrina thing, just not ever going to be repeated again.
So, is 2022 comparable where they started the season slow? Or, what's the last time they've actually been in sell-off position?
Yeah, that's just it. We've written this a bunch of times. They're very rarely have they ever even played any irrelevant games where they've been eliminated from playoff contention.
If they lose Sunday,
handful.
It'll be the first time they're 2-6 through 8 games since the Katrina season.
So
they were 3-7 in 2022. So they weren't 2-6, but they were. Yeah.
Sell off then, depending. But
I think
the trade deadline was in earlier too, right?
I think you can make a case to do it. I just don't think they will.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just knowing how Loomis thinks, he's all in all the time. He doesn't want to ever send that message.
And they just, frankly, just don't have a lot of tradable assets. And if you're trying to remain competitive while dumping some of them off, it'd be hard to imagine them trading Marshawn Lattimore at this point after their other outside corner was just lost for the year. So
you don't want to see Rico Payne in there.
Well, Rico Payton's fine.
No, yeah,
but Also, I mean, we don't even know what Marshawn Lattimore's status is going to be. He left the last game with a hamstring injury. He might come out there and not even practice today. So who knows?
Yeah. All right. While we're talking about people getting new jobs, the Saints Insider is sponsored by Associated Grocers, and Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent retail grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. Going to kind of continue a big picture look here to wrap up the show, talk about the defense's problems and maybe what this game in LA might or might not mean for the Saints right after this break. All right, as we continue on the Saints Insider, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button if you enjoy the content, tell your friends about us, growing all the time, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Guys, wanted to end the show with kind of a bigger picture look as we're kind of back from this mini bye as we start to look forward to LA. And we talked a lot about the offense, the injuries coming back. Maybe Carr comes back, maybe he doesn't. Regardless of any of that, they've got to fix the run defense. Luke, you wrote about it yesterday. I mean, they are dead last in the NFL in yards per carry allowed. They can't stop good running backs. They can't stop bad running backs.
Yeah.
They can't stop running backs you've never heard of.
Yeah, it's. Let me just run through some numbers here. Since week 3, so during their losing streak, 901 yards allowed, worse than the NFL. 6 yards per carry, worse than the NFL. The defense in general has allowed 151 points, 30th in the NFL. 6.7 yards per play, 32nd in the NFL. They finished top 5 in run defense every year from 2018 to 21. Since then, counting this year, 24th, 22nd, 29th. The 146 yards per game they've allowed through 7 games is the most they've allowed as a defense since 2012. 5.4 yards per carry, most ever by a Saints defense through 7 games. It is not good, and it's been frankly all 3 levels of the defense. There's this stat the Next Gen Stats puts out. They do such a great job of just like providing this tracking data, and the Saints are giving up 2.62 yards before contact this year. Worse than the NFL. Worse than the NFL since they're on track to be the worst in the NFL since 2018. The Seattle Seahawks allowed 2.64. The defensive backs have made more tackles on run plays, more tackles for loss, even than the defensive line. Demario Davis, who has been such a great player for them for a long time, is, frankly, I mean, I was looking back. I sent you guys some videos. There's some plays where he looks lost out there, missing tackles, jumping outside when the run goes inside and they run right into the area he vacated. There was one play, it was a 32-yard keeper by Bo Nix where the whole offense goes off left tackle. Like it's like a quarterback power where the whole offense is shifting and Demario Davis is running to the complete opposite side of the field. It's mystifying. This defense that for a long time was one of the best in the NFL, stopping the run, has just kind of completely fallen apart. And it's really like an all systems failure. Coaching, executing, tackling, playing with violence, as Dennis Allen says. Mm-hmm. All of that is not good right now.
Well, that's the thing is, like, you all asked DA about this on Monday, and he said, "Oh, well, I spent a lot of time looking at it during the break, and we've got to fix our communication, and we've got to fix our execution, and we've got to fix our effort, and that's all." What's left?
What's left?
Yeah. Basically, everything sucks.
How was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not getting off blocks. I mean, I guess that leads to the next gen stat, right? 2.6 yards before contact. That means the defensive line is getting walled off consistently, and you just expect somewhere along the line you'd fight off some of those blocks, and they're just not getting off the blocks. And then the second level, like Luke said, has just been a mess. I mean, I've never seen anything like some of the things that Luke alluded to in that game the other day. I mean, it was just weird. It was so weird and so out of character that you almost have to just throw it out. It was so off base. But it's obviously an issue because, the Broncos weren't even a good running team. They weren't even, that wasn't even a strength of theirs.
They surpassed their season average in the first half.
Yeah, so people know that. And Dennis Allen did say on his coach's show this week, he goes, we got to get it fixed because we're going to continue to see it. And now they're playing a team that's kind of part of their Jim Harbaugh DNA. I mean, even though they have a great quarterback, they want to run first, and they've got 2 really elite tackles. We know what's going to happen. They're going to come right at them and see if they can hold up. And right now, it's hard to believe they can until you see it on tape because, I mean, they've just been getting gashed. It's not just the 60-yard run by Saquon Barkley. It's a lot of the just 7- and 8-yard runs that on first down when you kind of are in your – they're going to run, and all of a sudden it opens up second and 3. I mean, they're ahead of the sticks at all. The Saints' defense is behind the sticks all the time.
All the time. And they've allowed 26 runs of 10-plus yards during their losing streak. They've allowed that number the entire season, but all of them have come in the losing streak. And I think they're like second or third from the bottom of the NFL in that stat. So, and a lot of those are like 11, 10, 13-yard gains. Not necessarily going to be the backbreaker, but when you're adding up 5, 6 of those a game,
Right.
that's when things start to get bad, and they haven't really made a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage, even though they've had chances. They've just missed opportunities there.
And we talked about it. I mean, the last 2 weeks, 8 different ball carriers have had at least a 10-yard run, including the quarterbacks for both teams. So it's not just like they're going against Derrick Henry or something. It's like everybody's eating against this defense. And a lot of it, I do have to say, seems to me like effort. That's definitely a factor. It's not the only factor, but a lot of stopping the run is just, want to, if you will. What's the Les Miles line? They got to have a lot of want.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And this week, Matt, it's not going to get easier. I know the Chargers have thrown it a little more the last couple of weeks, but they still want to be first and foremost a running team. They're going to come right after them.
Yeah, I mean, their offensive coordinator is Greg Roman. And that's like his main calling card. And Jim Harbaugh at the owners' meetings talk so much about the offensive line and running the ball and made kind of the circus out of it. I mean, they're an okay running team. It's not like they're lighting the world on fire, but they have good backs. J.K. Dobbins has had kind of a nice bounce back from the knee injuries he was dealing with. And yeah, they're going to attack them, and I think they're going to have success with it.
We'll do a full preview pod on that game on Friday. We'll wrap it up with this though. The Saints are 2-5. They've lost 5 in a row. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be Sunday. And I got to say, I know Allen said, hey, if Carr is, we'd really rather keep him out till week 9. That's when we've been expecting him back. Man, if he can go at all after what you saw from Spencer Rattler on Sunday or Thursday, you got to throw him out there, don't you? I mean, Spencer Rattler, negative 25 EPA in that game, minus 25 points on his own. And I know he didn't get any help. I know the offensive line and the receivers were all torn up. I don't know if Jake Hayner's any better, but I just don't see how you can start him and expect to win this game.
Yeah, especially with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa on the other side of the field. And I know the pressures, a lot of them have come from the interior, but we saw Taliesin Fuaga really struggled last week.
Yeah, that was his worst game.
That was very rough.
Yeah, so they need, it was fun seeing Spencer Rattler out there. I think he showed some really nice signs. But if as Dennis Allen said, it's not a pain management issue for Derek. Yeah. It's a functionality issue. If he can feel comfortable making the throws that he needs to make, he needs to be out there.
Yeah, I talked to Dr. Robert Volk this week. He was a former physician with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers about Carr's injury, just oblique injuries in general. And he said that the thing when coming back is sometimes quarterbacks are limited in their mobility outside the pocket, rolling out. That's kind of the stuff that's hard to do with obliques. And he should hold up in the pocket okay if he can turn. It's just, he said it's normally a 4 to 6 week injury. It makes sense that he's starting to throw in the 3rd week, and we'll see how he progresses. But I think it was encouraging that they at least upgraded him to doubtful last week, but if they hold him off another week, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think under normal circumstances you would, but this is getting pretty desperate, Jeff. And we were talking before the show, like if the Saints find a way to win on Sunday, which right now it doesn't look like, I don't see how you could predict that, but 5 of their next 6 games are against teams with losing records. I think 4 of the next 6 are at home. The only team with a winning record is the Falcons, who you almost beat, probably should have beaten Atlanta. You get them at home. I mean, like the opportunity is there, but like you said earlier, if you lose this game, all of a sudden you're looking at, we basically have to win 8 of 9 to make the playoffs, and it feels dead.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting decision what they do with Carr, because I think the problem with Rattler right now is just his inexperience in managing the game and managing the offense. I mean, that's where we see the warts, right? Him not seeing some of the blitzes that are getting thrown at him. He just hasn't been out there. He hadn't had enough reps. And so running the offense is really where it crops up. And that's what Derek Carr can do very well. I mean, and so I have less concerns with Rattler's physical ability than I do just the intangibles of leading the team and also the team having confidence. I think there's a lack of confidence right now in this team, and Carr would bolster that along with all the other guys that are coming back. So, yeah, if they can somehow steal this win, get a win out there, I think they're 7.5-point underdogs, which is a pretty big number.
That's
in
a
the NFL.
Rattler number, I think.
But that's a big number in the NFL.
I think if Carr practices today, you're going to see that number come down.
Yeah, so my point is, if they can win that game, though, yeah, you come back home, you go on the road to play a Carolina team that's certainly beatable. And then, things start happening, man. You start believing again. You get buy-in, get some of these guys back from injuries. You just never know. I mean, 2-5 is not insurmountable, especially in this division. But I think another loss, I mean, I just want to see – I'm saying the same thing I said last week. I want to see how this team plays. Like, I want to see some energy and enthusiasm. There was none of that on the field Thursday. It was weird. I mean, there was no – rallying to the ball, guy would every once in a while a defensive player would make a play, and the body language just isn't there, and that's a bad sign for me. And I think that'll be addressed, and if it's not, then this could be, I think, a very long season.
After the Chargers game, so Chargers are 3-3. Their next 5 opponents are 10-24. So there is an opportunity here if they win this game to get back into it.
You could, not predicting that you could easily rip off a 5-game winning streak to answer the 5.
Granted, the Saints are 2-5.
Yeah.
So those they
everyone else is looking at.
They go in the ledger of the other team, saying like, okay, well, we get the Saints, but like if they can go out there and get a win this week, the schedule does set up very favorably. We've all talked about this ad nauseum throughout the lead up to the season, that those first 7 games were going to be among the most difficult on their schedule, even the Denver game, because of who was going to be there. So they have a chance to turn things around. Like this is the softest part of their schedule. And they've got a long break. They're in this what you call the Widowmaker game. And a long break
Thursday
against a team on a short break. So it is possible. But like as Jeff was saying, it has to start ASAP, and they've got to fix a lot of glaring problems, and a lot of them are seem to be like mental issues with this team beyond all the physical stuff they've been dealing with.
I do think Tampa losing, and then let's face it, losing their top 2 receivers, and Atlanta getting trucked at home. I mean, I think that helps their mental outlook. I mean, if one of those teams wins one of those games, now you're 3 games back. But this thing's still alive because the division's just so weak. So I think that helps that you see Tampa's very vulnerable right now. Atlanta's vulnerable. You get Atlanta back here in a few weeks. So you get a win out there. I think it opens up everything.
Tampa Bay and Atlanta play each other this week too, so interesting times. We'll see if the Saints can get a win. We'll have injury updates and all that good stuff throughout the week on NOLA.com/Saints. We'll be back on Friday with a full Saints versus Chargers preview podcast. And until then, appreciate you joining. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, all of that good stuff. Head on over to YouTube. It's easier to comment. It's easier for us to see your comments on YouTube if you're a Facebook watcher. So encourage you to do that. Our producer is Norman Bell. Our thanks to him. He's Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. I'm Zach Ewing. This has been the Saints Insider.